There once was a sweet little girl who lived with her father and mother in a pretty little cottage in the village. At the end of the wood was another pretty cottage, and in it lived her grandmother. Everybody loved this little girl. Perhaps her grandmother loved her most of all and gave her many pretty little things. Once she gave her a red cloak with a hood, which she always wore, so people called her the Little Red Riding Hood. One morning, Little Red Riding Hood mother said, "Put on your things and go see your grandmother. She has been very ill. Take along this basket for her. I put in some fruits and other nutritious food." It was a bright and sunny morning. Little Red Riding Hood was so happy at first that she wanted to dance through the wood. All around her grew pretty wild flowers, which she loved so well, and she stopped to pick a bunch for her grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood wandered from the path and was bending down to pick a flower when from behind her gruff voice said, "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood." Little Red Riding Hood turned around and saw a great big wolf. But Little Red Riding Hood was not afraid.
"What have you in the basket, Little Red Riding Hood?"
"Fruits and nutritious food, Mr. Wolf."
"Where are you going with them, Little Red Riding Hood?"
"I'm going to my grandmother, who is ill, Mr. Wolf."
"Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?"
"Along the path where the wildflower bushes are, then through the gates at the end of the wood, Mr. Wolf." Then Mr. Wolf said,
"Good morning,"
and set off, and Little Red Riding Hood again went in search of wild flowers. At last he reached the porch covered with flowers and knocked on the door of the cottage. "Who is there?" said the grandmother.
"Little Red Riding Hood,"
said the wicked wolf. "Press the latch, open the door, and walk in," said the grandmother. Mr. Wolf pressed the latch and walked in, where the grandmother lay in the bed. He walked where the grandmother lay in the bed. He made one jump at her, but she jumped out of the bed into the closet. Then the wolf put on the cap which she had dropped and went into the bed. In a short while, Little Red Riding Hood knocked at the door and walked in, saying, "Good morning, grandmother. I have brought you fruits and nutritious food. And here are a bunch of flowers I gathered in the woods." As she came near the bed, she said, "What big ears you have, grandmother."
"All the better to hear you with, my dear."
"What big eyes you have, grandmother."
"All the better to see you with, my dear."
"But grandmother, what big mouth you have."
"All the better to eat you up with, my dear,"
he said, and he sprang at Little Red Riding Hood. Just at that moment, Little Red Riding Hood's father was passing the cottage and heard her scream. He rushed in and scared off Mr. Wolf. Mr. Wolf was never to be seen again. Everybody was happy that Little Red Riding Hood had escaped the wolf. Then Little Red Riding Hood's father carried her home, and they lived happily ever after.